Ladies and gentlemen, no matter what Nicholas says tonight during our review of The Killer, I will resist empathy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned in to another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast. Of course, Gerald is here with you. And my calculated assassin over on the other side, Nicholas. How are you, my man?
How do you know they're listening in the evening? Are you going to release this show at evening time?
All of our listeners only listen when it's dark outside.
Only when it's dark.
Okay. It's a weird thing. I don't know why. Nobody else listens in the daytime.
It's a shame thing. It's a shit. They don't want anybody to know. They're kind of like hiding in a dark corner of like their bedroom or something like that. And they're like,
exactly. Yeah. There's too much of a risk that somebody might hear them listening to it if it's during the day. So I don't know. Whatever.
It's true.
But nevertheless, how are you? It's we took last week off, which was a bummer, but I know we have so much going on. Killers of the Flower Moon is 3.5 hours, which I did see, by the way.
You know what the problem is? It's Martin Scorsese wants me to watch a 3.5 hour movie in a theater where they're going to show me. We calculated it during Five Nights at Freddy's. It was a half an hour worth of trailers and commercials. That's not including my drive time to the theater, which admittedly is like 5 minutes. Like it does. My theater's not far away. But even so, like I'm a busy man. I'm sorry. Like I'm very, very sorry.
No,
I do not have time. I did not have time last week to get Killers of the Flower Moon in. I've been so busy. I've been working overtime on top of work, and that's not even on top of all the other stuff I got going on. So
don't be sorry, buddy. I did miss you. I did miss you, and I went to see the movie, and I did throw up a review on my YouTube channel. I'll put a tag up here somewhere during this timestamp to point everybody to that as a quick 5-minute review. But I thought it was a really, really good film, just so you know. Like, it was really well constructed. The acting was top tier. Lily Gladstone blew me away as in the lead actress role. But I mean, you know what I'm going to say. It's way too long.
It's too long, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
I could have told you that was going to be your review before you went to see it.
I mean, I would be awestruck if I met Marty in person, but I feel like the first thing I would ask him would be like, "You couldn't cut 30 minutes from that?" I mean, come on, man. I wouldn't do that. I would.
It's because he can go unrestrained
to the ground and bow down him.
He's got carte blanche. Like, he can do what he wants. He can go to these streamers, and he can just be like, "Hey, I want to release a 3.5 hour movie or a 4 hour movie or whatever he wants to do," and they're going to be like, "Well, it's Martin Scorsese. Of course, we're going to say yes."
Yeah, no doubt, and I don't blame him for doing that actually, because I mean, he's the GOAT. Let's be honest. Speaking of goats, we're talking about David Fincher tonight in his new film, The Killer. But before we get there, Nick, and before we give our review on the movie, we like to start every episode out with what we call one big question.
You gotta ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
How fucking dare you, sir?
Wow.
How dare you wear that tank top and tempt me? I'm glad there's a desk here.
My God.
All right, man. Who wants to go first? I got a weird one for you. Can I go?
Oh, go ahead.
All right. So this is not a spoiler necessarily, but there's a point in the movie when we find out that Fassbender's character in The Killer has all these different storage facilities around the country, all these storage units, if you will.
Yeah.
So my kind of strange one big question to you is, if you could tomorrow have a storage unit in a specific location, like a specific city, I mean, like just a famous city or a place that you love or whatever, where would you have it? And the reason it would be there is because it would be a storage unit for like stuff from that city. So it would almost be like a museum of wherever it's located, if that kind of makes sense what I'm saying. First of all, does that make sense?
I have a storage unit in, say, Fort Lauderdale, and it's filled with all of my Fort Lauderdale memorabilia.
Your Florida stuff, but yeah.
Okay, I don't have an answer to that question. I've been nowhere in my life, Gerald. I've literally gone nowhere. I don't have a place that's memorable enough to me that I'd be like, oh my God, I wish I had a storage unit there filled with stuff from there. I honestly, God, I've never been anywhere that I'd want to have like a storage unit full of memorabilia from.
Let me give you mine.
Okay,
and then you tell me if you kind of get where I'm going here. So mine would be kind of easy, but it would be like LA or Hollywood.
Okay.
And it would be, I mean, I got all my Blu-rays. I got literally anything that has to do with movies, really. I mean, you could put in a Hollywood storage unit. I mean, it doesn't have to, you know what I'm saying? So I have so much shit as a movie lover already, to be honest, posters, Blu-rays, whatever. But I mean, that would be my answer. Like, if I could have a storage unit in LA and everything in that storage unit would kind of remind me of Hollywood, that's my answer. That's what kind of made me think about it.
See, okay. All right. So
What
the
are you
spirit of
doing?
your question is you're incredibly
Oh,
generalizing everything. Uh,
sure.
I've got movies in my Hollywood storage unit. My answer is still I don't have. I'm not a materialistic person. I own
That's
nothing.
true.
I own like no physical items of any kind. There is no place in the whole world that I'd want to have a storage unit, or there's no storage unit I'd want to have that would have themed memorabilia of any
All right.
place in
Well, I
it.
gave
'Cause
it a shot.
I don't own. I don't have. I don't
I
own
gave it a
anything.
shot. All right. It was
I
kind
don't.
of a
I'm,
roundabout way
here's
for me
my
to
firm
ask
belief.
you.
Like
Go ahead.
my firm belief about storage units, if you have a storage unit, I mean, like the character in this movie aside, we'll get into why he has storage units and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
my firm belief is if you own a storage unit, then you just need to sell stuff and pare down your
Yeah.
life.
You
You
have
can't
too
take
much
it with
stuff.
you have too much stuff.
Hmm.
Sell it, have a yard
In
sale, get rid of it. It's all your old, like grandma's old furniture from whenever, like just get rid of it, pare down your life.
hoarders gives me stress. Like, I
Yeah.
get what you're saying, and I agree with you. But I guess in the spirit of the question, it was a roundabout way for me to kind of ask you, like, what city do you admire? Kind of in a weird roundabout way,
I
connected to the killer.
don't know that I have an answer to that question
Okay,
either.
well, that's fair.
Because I don't know, again, that I've been to enough places to be like, oh my god, I love this place's vibe, or I'd really love to be here, visit this
All
place,
right,
or whatever. I've been nowhere in my life, Gerald. I've done nothing.
all right. Thanks for
As sad
participating
as
in
that
one
is,
big
can
question.
we just leave, like, Dan, just edit in a minute of silence here and just like let everyone just contemplate how sad and pathetic my life has been. Just stick
and
that
then
right
like
in there.
and then like in the middle of the silence, just have the cut of you going, "I've been nowhere in my life," and then it goes silent again for another minute.
You can get that like sad
And we come
trumpet
back in.
sound effect, like wah,
Oh
wah.
man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe I'll be able to come up with something for yours then. What do you have for me?
All right. Well, inspired by what you just mentioned there, you said that Fincher, speaking of the go in terms of directors, you mentioned Fincher's name in there. I
Mm-hmm.
disagree vehemently, by the way, but that's a
Mm-hmm.
discussion we'll get into as we get forward in the episode here.
Mm-hmm.
Who is let's say like Mount Rushmore, four directors, four GOAT directors that you would put on your Mount Rushmore. Who's on there, G? I'm putting you on the spot.
I mean,
Four directors on your Mount Rushmore.
all right. Well, you said that
In
we're
no
gonna have
order.
this.
It doesn't have to be in a specific
Yeah,
order.
this is in no particular order. That's
Yeah.
fair. But I mean, this is my personal Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah,
Like
your
me
personal.
personally.
Yeah, you're personal.
I mean, Fincher's
Don't
on mine.
don't get into this nonsense of like the best versus my favorite. It's obviously meant to be biased to you.
All right. I'm just making sure.
I hate it when people qualify like, "Oh, this is just my opinion." I know it is.
Okay.
I'm in a mood today.
I'm going to preface this by saying, in my opinion, I'm just kidding.
God.
All right. Well, Fincher's on mine. Absolutely. He is in my top two filmmakers of period of all time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So he's on there. Tarantino's on there for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, molded me basically into a movie fan. My year graduating high school and into college was like pure Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, like. So Tarantino's on there. I think we got to put Marty on there. We've already talked about him a couple times tonight, even. But I mean, Marty Scorsese is on there for me. And the fourth one is interesting. Man, John Carpenter, I think, is probably my fourth one. Yeah, he's just done. I know you're not necessarily the biggest fan, but he's done some movies that
He's done two good movies, Gerald.
That's not right at all.
He's done two good movies,
but yeah, I
at
mean,
least of the ones I've seen. That is,
this is off the top of my head, guys. So I apologize. I'm probably gonna listen to this back and be like, "Oh, I forgot to say whatever." But yeah, Carpenter, Fincher, Scorsese, Tarantino. What about
Bombard
you?
him on social media for not including your favorite among that
Yeah.
list.
Hit me with
Please get in there with him. I'll give you mine really quickly. So Orson Welles.
it. Hmm.
I'll also put Tarantino in there with mine.
Yeah.
Cameron, no love for Jimmy C.
That's a good one. He would be top 10 for sure.
All right, and I'm gonna say Alexander Payne.
Okay. Which, by the way, bummer, huh? Did you get my text?
I did get your time. How is it not? It's playing here. I could go watch it now.
I know, it's crazy. It's playing in a theater about an hour away from me, and I'm not going to be able to do it. I can already tell you, at least not before next Sunday. If you want to push
Wow.
it and do it maybe the week after or something,
Wow.
but yeah, I can't believe it's not playing anywhere near me. It's not even playing at my Alamo.
Let me very hypocritically judge you for not taking the time to go see a movie that's going to take up so much of your time.
I am very excited to see The Holdovers, and I think, man, I wish we could cover it on the show. It's not playing here. It's crazy.
We could still listen. We could still do a review of it whenever we want.
Yeah,
Like maybe we got to wait for it to hit streaming or whatever. I am going to go. Like I know it's playing at the Art Theater here. I don't know if it's playing at the Regal here. Probably not. But I'm going to definitely go see it because I love Alexander Payne.
Me
Downsizing notwithstanding. Downsizing was god awful.
It's not
horrible.
It's not even playing at my Alamo, which is even a 35, 40-minute drive for me, but I go there all the time because they do a lot of indie stuff that the AMC here won't get.
Maybe it'll go
And
a little wider
not
this
even
week or something like that. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll check. What we're talking about, guys, and what we're brainstorming is that we're definitely gonna spin the wheel at the end of this episode. We're gonna get a movie from the patrons or from Nick and myself. But if The Holdovers is not available for me to see, which it doesn't look like it will be, then we will review whatever movie we land on at the end of the episode. So stick around for that or fast forward to that if you want to. All right, so Nick, thank you for one big question. I am getting my score out here for The Killer.
Oh boy, I better do that too.
The new David Fincher. And
that's right. We have to rate this movie.
We start every movie review on every episode by giving our rating personally out of 10. We have not discussed it with each other. It's something we call the early score reveal.
Damn it, this always happens. I think I'm gonna score and then I never score. It's not fair.
Ooh.
It's not fair. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
5
out of 10.
9.
A fucking amazing cinematic work. 9 out of 10. Get the fuck out of here. Hold on. Let me kick Nick off this call.
5.
If anybody out there loves The Killer, tune in right now. You can take Nick's spot on the episode. So a 5 from Nick and a 9 from me
is a qualified Dan Brennick copyright. It's fine.
Is a 7 out of 10 cumulatively, which kind of hurts me a little bit. But Nick, I love this thing, man. Do you want me to go first, or do you want?
I need to know a 9. I thought maybe I was like, I know he's going to swing harder for this than I am. I knew you were going to go for this a lot harder than I was. Look, but 9 is a big swing, my dude.
I'm gonna defend this thing for the next 30 minutes or whatever. I'm just gonna tell you. So I'll go first. Spoiler-free thoughts, by the way, guys. For the next few minutes, we will be spoiler-free, and we'll let you know when we get into spoilers for The Killer. So, am I biased? Yes. I absolutely am biased. This was, I did a YouTube video back in late December, early January with my most anticipated movies of the year, and this was my number 1 most anticipated film. I was just talking about my local Alamo that's about 35 minutes away. I drove there to see this when it came out because it was limited release.
Oh, so you did get to see this on the big screen then?
I did, yeah. It was the only place playing in a reasonable distance. And then I watched it again this morning, actually, on Netflix as well, because it just released on Netflix yesterday. So I am biased. I'm going to go ahead and admit that up front. I get it. I hated Mank. I mean, hate might be a strong word, but I just wasn't into Mank. I just never got into the story. And I know you're even an Orson Welles guy, and you even had a tough time with it when that came out.
No, I didn't have a tough time with it. I vehemently hated it because it's based on something that was debunked in the 70s when they tried to say that Orson Welles wasn't like as like responsible for Citizen Kane's success as Herman Mankiewicz was, and then Fincher decides to drum it up because he's Pauline Kael 2.0. Like, as beautiful as that movie was, as good as Oldman was in that movie,
Right.
like that movie was really well shot. There was a lot of great aspects to it, but like ultimately it was like, this has already been debunked once. Like, you can't just circle the wagons back around and try to do the whole thing again. Like,
Right.
film scholars already were like, no, stop.
Well, the reason I mentioned Mank is because that kind of plays in a little bit to my love for The Killer as well, because this is obviously his follow-up to Mank, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. I just didn't like it. In fact, I probably would have given Mank like a 5 out of 10, which is what you're giving this.
Generous.
So, in talking about The Killer, and talking about The Killer specifically, not necessarily just Fincher as a filmmaker, this was such a precise, methodical, like strict movie. I don't even want to say thriller, because I feel like this was, so you know how you have movies that are like character studies where they focus on, you know, the main characters or whatever. This movie was like a character study, but it was focused on the art, if you will, or the act of him being an assassin. And I was just really impressed with how this movie took that kind of normal story that we've gotten 100 times in Hollywood. You know, a hit goes wrong, and you know, the guy that was on the other end of the trigger has to, you know, figure out how he can fix his mistake. And like, I mean, we've seen that in any number of ways, whether it's through a comedy or an action or whatever. But what this movie did that was different is that it was like more about the act of him kind of going through this life as an assassin, and it didn't necessarily bother us with the details of that intimate character piece that we would get a lot of times in these types of movies. It wasn't so much about Fassbender's character as it was about what he is doing and why he's doing it. And I thought that was just such a courageous angle to take with a pretty basic story like that. I mean, there's some great scenes in this movie that are pretty formulaic. You know, when he meets the Brute in Florida and they end up having that big fight, and that was an awesome scene. I felt
best
like
scene in the movie by far.
And, yeah, absolutely. And you know, the really kind of like down to earth, like conversation he has with Tilda Swinton towards the end of the movie. I thought that was an awesome scene too, in the restaurant there. But I mean, for the most part, Fincher really tries to put you in the mind and the headspace and the steps, you know, in the shoes of this guy. And he did it, man. Like, I'm just going to tell you. I mean, now I did see it in a theater. I was immersed. Like, I was really, really bought in. But I mean, I was hooked, man. Like, immediately. Like, when Fassbender's character is kind of like giving us what he's thinking. Because there's very little dialogue, by the way, in this movie, too. Did you realize that? Like, Fassbender speaks hardly no lines in this movie aside from the narration pieces.
Yep.
And it was just an interesting approach. I don't know. I'm super biased because I love Fincher. I love Fassbender. I think that this is it's written by Andrew Kevin Walker, who also wrote Seven, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's also my favorite Fincher film. So they have the two of them reunited. You have Reznor Ross on the score, which I thought was phenomenal in this movie. It might possibly be their lone Oscar chances this year for best score as well. So yeah, man, this hit for me big time. The only reason I didn't give it a 10 out of 10 is because the ending I wanted something a little bit different for the ending, like the last like few minutes.
We'll talk about it when we get into spoilers and stuff.
But aside from that, I mean, I freaking loved it, obviously. So what do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, there's some perspective shifts that this film does early on, which I was really hoping was going to give us more of this, because in the first act, basically, it kind of gives us this perspective switch where, like, he has this thing where he puts in headphones and listens to music, and that's how he gets into the assassin rhythm or whatever. And then it kind of keeps cutting to his perspective. We're seeing through his eyes, and then we hear the music. And like, if you better be a Smiths fan if you watch this movie, because like literally the whole movie is just nothing but the Smiths. Okay,
I loved it.
But you're like and then it'll cut to like an exterior shot of like a third person shot looking at him, or like of him doing something in the room, or then whatever else, but then it cuts to more of that first person kind of stuff. And like that's all at the very beginning of the movie, and I really actually liked that. I thought that was really phenomenal to kind of give us that first person perspective of what he's going through and everything. But the film doesn't stick with that. You don't get any more of that after that beginning sequence. Am I wrong? Like I feel like the film did that. We spent like he makes a very specific
It's a
comment about
long
like
opening.
the boredom of his job and like the tedium of it and like all these different kinds of things. And I like that scene kind of played a little bit with that expectation of something. Like it's more about like the anticipation of that moment of the kill. I thought like once he actually had to switch into like once he realized like the target was there and had to actually like get ready to take the shot and like do all that stuff. Like I thought the tension there was really well executed. First act of this, like the beginning of it, I was all in. Like I was all like, yeah, like let us have those perspective shifts where we're in his head seeing things through his eyes. But the film kind of ditches that as it goes. Now I'm going to agree with you on one part. Like you said that this was not like your typical kind of thriller. Your typical kind of thriller would give you you'd get to see it would cut to a scene of the bad guys being like, oh my god, this assassin guy is ripping his way through everybody, and like what are we going to do to stop him, like blah blah blah. Think about like John Wick. Like John Wick has those types of scenes where it cuts to like the bad guys who are like, John Wick's shooting everybody, what do we do? Send more guys at him and they all die too. And then like it's not that kind of thriller. It literally just follows him and his attempts to kind of get away and his attempts to kind of clean up after this shot and everything that happens. It's just like after the shot, like after that, and like there was even some good tension in like that initial like him on like that little moped like trying to like get to where he's going to be unseen and everything, like all that, like that I thought was good. But after that, aside from that brawl in the Floridian's house, which was again best scene of the movie, it's phenomenal. It was quote Dan Brennick. It was copyright Dan Brennick. Fine. It was just a movie that happened to me and I watched
All
it.
right.
Like
well,
I was
thank you
just
thank you for copywriting Dan for sure, because I don't want to get sued on this.
Well, I
episode,
don't want any of that. I don't want to bring
let's,
down any of that heat.
While we kind of dissect what our initial thoughts there were, let's go ahead and peel back the spoiler wall, Nick. So going forward, guys, if you have not seen The Killer, then there will be spoilers for the rest of this discussion, so just be aware of that. Nick, it's not even that I necessarily disagree with you, but I think I just liked it more than you did. It didn't bother me. It sounded like it bothered you. I do agree that there was a tonal
It didn't
shift
bother me. It was fine. It was just
Well, I mean, you brought your score down. I mean,
I think here's the thing. I think maybe you can even make the argument here. This is going to be a wild take for me, so strap yourself in. This killer is very straight-laced, okay? This killer is very like silent and like talks about like the boredom of his thing and like all this different stuff, and like how he as a person, as a character, like there's no emotion. He doesn't react to anything. He has no politics. He has no XYZ. He has no, like, he's so good at what he does because he does not care. He is not invested. Maybe Fincher did such a good job of selling the lack of investment and attachment of this character that it subsequently detached and uninvested me from the movie. Because, I mean, like, I wanted to be right there. Like, I wanted to be right there after that opening, like after the whole setup of the shot, like just kind of the anticipation. Because you're like, he's an assassin and he's just waiting for his target to show up. And you know that's what's happening. And you're just waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And then boom, finally that moment comes. And like I said, I love the tension in that scene. He has to hastily put together the rifle while the target gets up in the apartment over there. And then he lines up and then takes the shot and misses.
Whoops.
It's like, whoa. It's like, well, like the whole lead up, the whole execution of that open is great. I just think the film, I just think it completely skids to a halt like from that point forward, pretty much.
All right. Well, let me just throw this at you then,
Okay.
because again, it's like I said, it's not like I'm necessarily disagreeing with you, because I do think there was a huge tonal shift from that initial act, the first act, really, that first chapter, because he even labels these as chapters too throughout the movie.
Yep, he does. Yep.
I think there's 6 of them, 5 or
6, I
6.
think. Yeah. Yeah, 6.
But after that first chapter, there is a tonal shift. I agree with you. What I think, though, or what I thought about after, because I had that thought as well, was that in that in that opening, we're seeing the methodical nature of him as an assassin, right? And it's not about him as a person at all. It doesn't matter who is talking right now. We're just talking about the act of what he does, okay? And he's not necessarily in the narration or whatever, but the screenplay is not trying to connect us to that person. It's
No.
just showing us what he does, and when he feels bored and why he feels bored, and his heart rate and stuff, that when it goes up in certain situations, obviously, and how calculated and calm he can be when he's literally about to shoot somebody in the face. And we get all that, and then, like you said, it comes to a pretty cool climax. But I think that the reason, when I was reflecting on it, that we need that tonal shift after that first act is because when he gets back to his house after, he leaves the missed hit or whatever, it becomes personal to him. So the rest of the movie is a personal journey for him, because in a way it turns into a revenge film, because he's trying to get the people that hurt his lover, which they don't really even tell us, but I'm assuming that's his wife or girlfriend or whatever in the movie. Somebody obviously he cares about. And because of what happened to her and what they did to his home, his expertise that we saw in that first act is now shifted it's shifted through a personal view now, right? So it's not about just the job of being an assassin right now or for the rest of the movie. It's about him using those skills to seek revenge on the people that wronged him.
Yeah.
So I think that the tonal shift was almost necessary, because otherwise we're not going to care in the least, right? Because it's just going to be this nameless, faceless dude that's killing people. Does that make sense, what I'm kind of saying there?
It kind of does, and I mean, the thing that I think really doesn't work for me in the aspect of this film is, you have, like I said, you have those great moments kind of in that opening when he's setting up for the shot and doing all these things where it's shifting into like a first person perspective for him. Like, we're actually, like, it literally puts you between his ears. Like, the music comes up as if we're sitting to listen. I would have appreciated if they would have carried that thing through the whole movie, because there's clearly, like, he's narrating to us as he's doing these things. He's giving us like his assassin code or whatever, like, like, anticipate, don't improvise, like,
Right. He's just
stick to the
quoting
plan,
his
like all these
mantra.
different
Yeah.
things. Like, when he's very clearly, it's very much an antithesis of what he's going through there. Like, it's very much like, yes, he is working out a plan to do this, but like, it's none of this is a thing that he had set in motion before. These are all reactions that he has had to do based on this missed shot and based on, like, the people attacking his home. Like, these are all reactions he's had to have. So, like, I would have appreciated, like, I would have really liked, like, dive into the psychology of this character more. This is Fincher. If anybody's going to dive into the psychology of a character, you would expect Fincher to do it. Fincher really doesn't seem interested in it here, which kind of surprises me.
Mm-hmm.
And like I would have liked, especially in those sequences where, he's a stone cold assassin. Like, obviously he's doing all these different things and trying to convince us, the audience. But like, I would have loved, like, that in between the ears, like go back into, like, just into his perspective, like, and have a little bit of panic and have a little bit of frustration and have a little bit of
There was
whatever.
a couple times. Remember when he was waiting outside the Floridian's home and he was behind the car, and he was waiting for the dog to fall asleep or whatever. I mean, there was a couple scenes here and there where it kind of did what you're saying. But again, I think that the break happened. Let me phrase it like this. I think Fincher and Walker, the screenwriter, purposefully had the break after the missed shot. I think it was supposed to be a different focal point for us as a viewer, I feel like, because it became a personal journey for him after that point.
Yeah.
But up until that point, it was more about him taking out the target and being an assassin, which I love the first act. I mean, don't get me wrong.
I mean, it's not even really about him. It's because we don't even learn his name in the movie. Like, he's just an
No.
assassin. Like, it's more about, you know, him executing his skills, and then when he's thrust into a scenario in which he can't just rely, like, he can't, it's not like a planned hit where he's sitting and being patient,
Right, sure, yeah.
waiting for things to happen, and he's got to kind of shift into a complete other mode. Like, how does he handle that? I don't know. Like, I wish there was, I wish there was more maybe, and maybe there were for other people, but not for me. Like, I wish there were more layers in there that would have, like, helped me stay invested in his journey, because it's not like there's not really well made scenes here. Like, I mean, we got to talk more about the brawl at the Brute's house, like in Florida. Like that scene is, like, I love how darkly
So good,
lit it
man.
is. Like, it's really atmospheric. Like, it's really scary in a way, like the way that Fincher decides to shoot it, because, like, you don't know what's going on. Like, you kind of can make out what's going on. Like, you can see, like, you know, like different things, but it's a brutal fight. Really, really effective, like really, really amazing. And, like, that kind of reinvigorated me a little bit, because that was the first time it was like, ooh, maybe they're going to put him back on his heels or something like that, like a little bit or something, or like whatever. But, like, that's like, I don't know if did the film, I don't know. I'm not even saying that the film needed more of that kind of level of brutality, like fight scene sort of thing. I don't even think it necessarily did, because each of these situations requires a different tact, or a different tactic as far as, like, his character goes, right? Like, it all requires a different approach from him.
Well, I echo.
I don't know.
I echo what you're saying about the fight in the Floridian's home. I thought that was, aside from the Tilda Swinton scene, but that was obviously a much more, like, dialogue driven scene, really, by her. To be honest, I mean,
100% by her. He has like 2 lines of dialogue in that whole exchange, I think.
She was phenomenal in this, and she was only in one scene, but she was so good, man. So convincing. And while she's trying to connect to him, really in an effort to save her life, I mean, let's be honest. But
I don't even think she's trying to save her life. I disagree. I don't think she's trying to save her life at all. I think she knows enough about what kind of person he is to know that no matter what she says or does, she's going to die.
Right, but the only reason I say that is because at the end, when it's revealed that she has a knife in her hand that she was going to try to stab him with.
Of course she was, yeah.
But I think, in other words, I think she thought, or at least had a lingering thought the whole time that she was in his presence, that maybe I'll get out of this. And I thought that because I saw the knife at the end.
Yeah, I think she definitely like had an idea that she was going to escape or be able to get out of it through whatever means.
Right, but that was the best.
I don't think she was trying to talk her way out of it, though, necessarily.
No. I don't think that either. But I thought that she always kind of had an inkling, like, this could go 50-50. You know, like, I thought her character kind of thought that, and I think that she was maybe naive in that respect.
Well, yeah, because she expects this character to have emotion and to have empathy. Right. But we, of course, as an audience, like, it didn't come as a surprise to me, because we as an audience, especially by that point, had come to expect him. Like, I mean, you have the scene in, like, the boss, like, or the lawyer's office, or like the taxi driver, where he just, like, straight up just, like, plugs the kid,
kills the dude
driving the taxi. And, like, you know, I mean, he does have the one moment of empathy where he, you know, breaks the lady's neck and pushes her down the stairs, so that way she can still collect the life insurance. Like, she doesn't just completely disappear like the lawyer does. The brutality, like, how great is just, like, this straight up, like, stone cold shot of, like, blowing the guy's brains out, like the Floridian's brains out in the toilet and whatever.
Just doesn't care,
we already know from that point, like, all these different things. Like, he approaches all these scenarios with no empathy, no emotion. We know he's going to kill her. Like, we know that that's his plan, like, all along.
Know she's done. Yeah.
Segue then, because I want to talk about the ending too, because you expressed maybe that you had hoped that the ending would go another way. Talk about it.
Well, I don't really know how I would want it to go or what I could write it to be, but I wasn't a huge fan of like them, riding off into the sunset at the end, and just kind of the last few minutes where they were in paradise or whatever. And it was him and his girl
I
that
mean, that
had
was
been in
just
the
his house.
hospital before. Well, yeah, but you know what I mean, like
Well, right,
riding off
right,
into
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
sunset. I don't know. I guess I would have liked the ambiguity there in terms of like, is he okay now? Is he going to live a life or whatever, or is he going to go back to being an assassin? Like in other words, Fincher kind of paints a picture like he's retired and he's gonna, because they mentioned it a couple times in the movie, like the best thing for you to do is just leave and go live your new life. Like you have enough money, you've done enough things, you don't need to keep
Yeah, yeah,
risking it
yeah.
all or whatever. So they kind of were foreshadowing that for us, and then it ended up happening. So I mean, I guess I'm saying I'm kind of happy for the character, but in terms of it from a plot beat in the movie, I didn't necessarily like visually, like, oh, they're sitting out here on the back porch watching the waves crash or whatever, and that's the end of the
Mhm.
movie. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. What did you think about him sparing the client at the end? Were you okay with that, or did you think he should kill that dude?
I didn't dislike it. And on,
Okay.
on on reflection after watching the movie, I don't dislike it even more. Like, I mean, for all the things, and that's why it bookends it with that, with him bringing it back to that whole like one of the many, one of the few kind of thing, like that he does at the beginning of the film, that he talks about at the beginning of the film. And
Hmm.
he kind of almost sets it up like at the beginning of the film, like he's one of the few or whatever. But he's not. He's one of the many. And I think like no matter what, like being the character that he is in the world that he's in, like think about it this way: he's almost like an anti John Wick. Like he knows, like what is it in John Wick 2? Like John Wick kills like the member of the high table or whatever, and
Hmm.
brings all that heat down on him. Like
Hmm.
this is like the anti John Wick. Like this character is like, that's too much heat for me to bring down. If I plug this guy, I'm never going to be able to have anything. Like
Right.
I'm gonna be on the run forever, like whatever, like don't upset the status quo,
Right.
like whatever, like taking out everybody else, like everybody else is just like low level people, like they're all replaceable in one way or another, like blah blah blah. Like, but
Hmm.
you can't take out this, because this dude's so rich and this dude's so powerful, like he goes missing and it's gonna like completely like upset the
And they
order, and
start
like
putting
he's
the
gonna be
pieces
haunted for the rest of
together.
his
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't, from that perspective, as like a purely survival instinct from that character, I think I like it. I don't think I dislike it
I agree.
from that perspective.
I agree. At first, I was like, man, they leaned a little too hard into him, like with the no empathy thing, and then he just let this guy live. But
It feels shocking at first, right? It
yeah,
feels like, whoa, you're not gonna
you're not
just
gonna
straight
kill
up blow
this
this
dude.
guy's brains
Yeah,
out, like yeah.
yeah, but you're right. But then when you reflect on it, you're like, well, he kind of had to do that. And also, I took it as he kind of believed the guy too, in terms of the lawyer was really the bad guy, and like he didn't know what the lawyer was doing, or like whatever. So I don't know. It was one of those breaks in logic for me as a viewer where I was like, well, he's been saying no empathy, and like, I mean, he's been blowing everybody's brains out like at
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
instant. You know what I mean? So it's like, why is he leaving this dude that? But then, like you said, when you reflect on it, it's like he's not going to be able to retire and live a happy life if he's always having to worry about who's over his shoulder for this one
Yeah.
kill that he did that wasn't sanctioned or whatever. So I agree with you. Before we wrap up, Nick, how do you feel about the performances here? It comes up in the comment section later from the fans, but Michael Fassbender's always been one of my faves. I really like him. I think he has this really cool thing as an actor where he can do comedy, he can do drama, and in this case, he's playing kind of a scary assassin that, I mean, we talked about that scene in the Brute's home. I mean, I was all in. I was like, yeah, I believed every second of his character. How did you feel about the performances in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, Fassbender's great. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't take that away from him. He's phenomenal. He really really is. And I mean, he like he sells that he is, this stone cold assassin who has these skills, and like he says very early on in the movie, like consider yourself lucky if
Yeah.
you
If you
don't
don't
ever cross
cross on
paths with
path.
me.
Yeah.
Like that, like I really really love that, like, and I think Fassbender embodies it like perfectly. I really think. I mean, Fassbender's fantastic. Like if we get to it in the comments section, like I really love like a lot of his performances. So I can't wait to talk about it. But he's great. I mean, I don't really think anybody else is really in the film enough
Not
to
really.
like.
I mean,
be like, oh my god, this performance really stood out. This performance stood out. You mentioned Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton was great in her part, but there's no other character in this movie. It's all him.
Yeah,
it's 100%.
It's all him. It's all, and frankly, it's all Fincher. And the filmmaking here. I know you're giving it a lower score than I am, but I mean, the filmmaking here is like fucking stellar, dude. I mean, like we're talking the cinematography, the production design.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's Fincher. It's like you expect perfection.
Tier.
You expect perfect, like even Mank, which again, like neither one of us liked. Like even Mank was incredibly well made, incredibly well made. It's just I think where Fincher loses himself too often is in these meandering kind of stories that just I feel like anyway just don't have the weight that I hope or expect them to.
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
Wow.
What if Fincher listens to this? David, I love you, and I think you're one of the greats. So, all right.
I do not. Even though he did direct, like I said, The Social Network was still my favorite movie of last decade. Like that movie's a masterpiece. Like Fincher's done like 7, Fight Club. I mean, he's done some really, really amazing stuff. Like he really, really has. But he's also made some movies that I think are bafflingly bad.
This is
this one's middling for me.
This is let me think for a second. So 7 is my all-time favorite. And then it's The Social Network, Fight Club. And then this one's probably honestly tied with like Gone Girl. I mean, this is top 5 Fincher for me, The Killer. I absolutely love this. I love him turning this kind of revenge story, assassin story kind of on its head and giving us a different perspective to this kind of played out story. I really, really liked it. Like,
it would have been easy to turn this into a John Wick clone, and I'm grateful it didn't go in that direction. Sure, I really am.
Yeah, for sure.
I just think it needed more. I think it needed more meat, or like if you're gonna make me spend the entire movie and I'll like take stride for stride with this character. Like I've talked about it before on the show. I'm a very character driven person. So
yeah, I know.
If
this movie is not that.
Yeah, this movie's not that. And if a movie's not going to be that, it's not like I don't like movies that aren't character driven, because I can really, really love them, but they have to be something special. And I like I said, this is fine. It's a movie that happened to me. And that's the best thing I can say about it. It's
I
fine.
disagree. It sits in my top 10 of the year as we're sitting here currently, and
Jeez.
I don't know how that'll shake out the last couple months.
10 movies this year? Well, it's better than Five Nights at Freddy's. Like it'll definitely. It's not going to end up on the list with Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh wow! Well, that's David Fincher. You're doing something right. You beat out Five Nights at Freddy's for Nick this week or this month. All right, there we go, guys. That was our discussion on The Killer. A 5 from Nick. Wow, such disrespect. And a 9 from me, which puts it at a 7 overall from the P's cumulatively. So, Nick, we wrap up every episode. We head over to the fan group and see what the fans had to say. We got some questions over there in the comments section. All right. Nick, so do you want to go first, buddy? You want to grab a question out of the comment section there, or would you like me to grab one?
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna grab.
All right, do me a favor. Don't do that thing where you like list all the questions and then you answer all of them, because then I don't have anything to choose from. But go ahead.
You're not the boss of me. Destruction in Human Form, Mr. Jared Taylor. Love you, brother. Yes. It says, what do you find to be most Fincher's most overrated and underrated film? Underrated's an interesting question. I feel like I don't know if he's got anything that's necessarily super underrated. I mean, I almost want to say Gone Girl, but I think a lot of people think really highly of Gone Girl, so I don't even necessarily think that about it. But I only picked this question just so I can say once again for the millionth time how bad Zodiac is. I hate it. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I don't understand how people even remotely find it entertaining or engaging or interesting to watch. It's terrible. It's so bad.
Come on.
It's so bad. It's how do you like a 3-hour movie in which nothing happens? It's 3 hours long. It's procedural. Like endlessly long. It's terrible. I just hate it. That is by far Fincher's most overrated movie. I don't know what else.
If you
I'm
say
thinking of
so.
the rest of Fincher's filmography. I've seen most. It's like it's not like it's some directors I haven't seen a lot of them. I've
Well,
seen most of the films he's done, and
I would
what would
say
you
his
say would be
most
underrated?
I would say his most underrated might be The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, because I don't think
Mm,
that gets enough. I don't think that gets enough love.
I
I
would
think.
rather watch this than watch that again. Like that
I mean, me
was
too. But I'm saying in terms of his catalog, I think it might be the most. People don't talk about it when they talk about Fincher, and I think it's a really beautiful film. It really
the
is.
bookend of that movie where they had like the character in was it Kate Blanchett's character like in the hospital after like Hurricane Katrina, like
Hmm.
that was like what I like to refer to as like head over the like sledgehammer to the head type of filmmaking, where it's like, do you
Sure. Yeah.
get my point? Do you get my point? And like where they're beating it into your head over and over because they want to make sure you got their point. I hate
Also,
filmmaking like that. It like that really drove the score of that film down for me.
also love Panic Room, and people don't talk
I've
about
never
that
seen
one a
Panic
lot
Room's,
either.
I think, the only Fincher I've never seen.
But I
I
love that one
think
too.
I've never seen The Game either. I've never seen The Game or
That's a
Alien
good one.
3. So I have missed out on a few of them. I would guess so. Runner up from Zodiac on the overrated category would be Fight Club. Even though I do really like Fight Club, Fight Club is one of those movies like Boondock Saints where
Hmm.
people became so like slavishly devoted to it, where it became like a religion to them,
Hmm.
where it got really, really aggravating and it kind of dragged down the quality of Fight Club. Like on a rewatch, like I can't rewatch it without thinking about that, which I know is the baggage I'm carrying into the film and not the film's fault. Speaking of overrated Fincher, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, 7.8 on IMDb.
Oh,
How?
dude, I love that movie. I
It's
loved it.
bafflingly bad. How do you like
No,
these
I
movies
loved
that
it.
are endlessly long?
I loved it.
You are the
All right.
king, the absolute king of I hate long movies, and yet you love these Fincher
Yeah.
movies that are endless.
Um.
Endless.
So this is going to be a hard one for me. Dan might have to edit around this. I apologize, Danny boy, but our buddy Jason Nerdrovert, patron of the show, he wants us to recast the killer with a different actor in the lead role and a different band or group on his iPad or iPod. Because obviously in this one, Fassbender's listening to the Smiths the whole time.
Yep.
So I just thought of this really. Now hear me out, okay, Nick? I can't wait to see your face. Let me go back to the camera.
God,
This
no.
now, Jason. I'm gonna give my. This is what I thought of. All right.
Mhm.
If you're a video audience, I'm gonna turn the camera to Nick when I say it. I thought of Adam Sandler, and he's listening to the catalog of Poison, the rock band from the 90s.
Poison. Oh my
Dude, did I
goodness.
nail it or what? I mean, could you imagine Adam
That's not bad.
Sandler as an assassin listening to Nothing But a Good Time and Unskinny Bop? I mean, come on.
That's not bad.
Yeah. What do you get? Do you have anything?
Man, I'm gonna gender bend the role. I'm gonna throw Jessica Chastain in there. I mean, because Jessica
Ooh.
Chastain as a stone cold assassin would be
Yeah.
the greatest movie of all time.
Yeah.
Come kill me, mommy.
Yeah.
But I'm struggling on the music.
What
I kind
would
of
you
like
listen to?
I kind of like you going in that kind of direction of like an 80s. So let's throw in a Bon Jovi or something like that. Let's
Yeah,
just
I
throw
can
in
see her doing that.
like a Bon Jovi or something like that. Yeah,
I can see her doing that.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Slippery when wet, am I right? All right. You can cut that out if you want. There you go, guys. Thank you guys for the comments in the comment section this week.
Thank you.
Man, God, I love The Killer. It's in my top 10 of the year right now. Nick, not as high on it, but it is streaming on Netflix if you don't have it in your city. So if you're into David Fincher, if you love those kind of like thriller, gritty dramas, then give it a go. It's on Netflix right now as we speak. All right, guys. So this week, in lieu of going to see The Holdovers, because it's not playing in all markets, and by that I mean my own, I'd have to drive an hour to see it this week, and that's going to be tough to do with the holidays and work and everything. So we're going to spin the wheel. This is kind of improv. We didn't know we were going to be doing that this week, but we are going to spin the roulette wheel. Now, just so everyone knows, Nick, if it lands on him, he can pick a movie for us to review next week. If it lands on me, I can pick one. But if it lands on the patrons, we put all of the patron picks into a wheel, and we spin that thing, and then we see what movie we land on selected by one of our patrons. If you'd like to get in on that action, for as little as $1, you can be a patron of the show, and you can throw a movie at us to review at least like once a month or so.
Yep.
So go to the Patreon link below and check that out. Nick, are you ready, brother? I'm going to go over here and I'm going to spin this wheel and see what we land on, man.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Where the hell is the spin button? Oh, here it is. All right, here we go. I'm going to count us down. I'm going to hit spin. 3, 2, 1. There it goes. If this lands on Nick, it is fixed. Oh my God.
No.
Oh! Did you see how close that was?
Video audience. Please. He looks like a priest in some kind of a weird sex cult, right?
Did you see
like
how close that
photo,
was?
That would be like the headshot photo of like him, like
God,
when he gets arrested, or like when they have the news
at that thing
about him.
Oh man, that is so good. Look at that thing.
Oh.
I'm gonna let. All right, give me a second. I'm gonna let everybody screenshot this. So they can make it their wallpaper on their phone. Look how close that was. All right, Nick. I'm gonna pick my. As I'm looking at my Letterboxd 250 right now, it's my number 3 film of all time. All right, Unforgiven, directed by Clint Eastwood from 1991.
Warm up my 2 out of 10 from last week to come back next week.
Don't you do this to me? Don't you do this to me? Unforgiven from Clint Eastwood from 91 is one of my favorite films of all time. I'll have a little story about it when we review it. But there you go. Are you a Clint fan, or do you like Clint Eastwood? Do you like Westerns?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm enough of a fan of Clint Eastwood to be anticipating. It's a blind spot for me. I've seen a lot more of his more really recent stuff, like the stuff that he's made like in his like late 90s. What is he, like 120 now?
Yeah, he's pretty old.
Clint Eastwood's old.
Yeah,
like I've seen like what was it like Gran Torino, Gran Torino was
Turismo,
like Gran Torino, not Gran Turismo.
he
He was not in Gran Turismo.
Was he in Gran Turismo? Man, he was really flying around that track.
He was in the stands just like shouting at the kids, driving their fast cars.
He was on the pit crew. That's why they took a while to get her out of the pits. All right, well, we'll do Gran Turismo next week. No, I'm just kidding. We'll do Unforgiven, directed by Mr. Clint Eastwood, starring Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman. Like I said, it's one of my favorites of all time, and I'm excited that it's a blind spot for you, so we'll get to see what you think about it.
Gonna warm up that 2 out of 10. Here we go.
Oh God, don't you do it to me. I can't take it if you do. I'm so excited to rewatch that too. It's been about a week since I've seen it, so I need to rewatch it. All right, well, we'll get together then, Nicholas, and my birthday's coming up, so please be kind to Unforgiven. My birthday's on when this episode comes out. It's my birthday. Did you know that? David Fincher movie on my birthday. Wow. And you gave it a 5.
And this was the best present you could find for that.
Unbelievable.
That is shocking. Yeah. Shocking.
All right, man. I love you. We'll get together next week and we will do the Gerald selected. I was going to say patron selected, but the Gerald selected Unforgiven. Until then, guys, everybody take care.
Peace.